say thanks for being here. Thanks for coming to the job fair and everything like that. First what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the folks here on the panel. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit. Kind of going to do a quick little survey of the people who are in the audience, so you can kind of get a feel for who's actually in the audience. And then after we do that, I'm going to ask them some specific questions about their job as a recruiter, so that you can learn more about the hiring process. We'll go through that for a little bit, and then the second half of this, we can take some questions from the audience, and then that way we also have a bigger audience by the time the questions kind of get here. So first thing I want to do is just kind of introduce everybody. So we've got, over here we've got Amanda. Amanda's from CISA, and without going into too much detail right now, what does CISA stand for? Because I can never say it, it's like a super long name.
Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
There we go, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, which is actually a new kind of division of the Department of Homeland Security, if you're not familiar with it. But I'm sure that when you stop by her booth, she can give you all kinds of information about it. Amanda's been recruiting for a long time, more than 10 years probably.
Yeah.
Not all of it at CISA, but she's an experienced recruiter. We've also got here in the middle, we've got Deanna Sharp. She's from CenturyLink. Deanna has been recruiting for a long time as well. I'm not going to go over how long. I will tell you that she's been the talent acquisition manager. She's been the talent acquisition manager at CenturyLink Government Services for the last 5 years.
Yes.
According to your LinkedIn profile, at least.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
5 is good.
5 is good. And then we've got Stacy Garnett from Feddata. Stacy, you've been recruiting for a while as well, but not all of it at Feddata. I think did you work New York Life?
Yeah,
or something
I was
like that?
doing recruiting for finance and a little bit of fintech.
So when we get their perspectives here, a lot of it will be about their jobs at their particular companies, but they'll give you their perspectives as recruiters, because it's one of the things that I wanted to get, the takeaway of this is that there is no silver bullet answer to things. There is no one way to find a job, and just because your buddy did it this way at that company doesn't mean you can do the same thing at any company that you want to. So if these folks give you different answers, that's okay. That's actually good if they give you different answers, because we want to learn those concepts that we can apply to learn about different companies, different organizations. So a little bit about myself. My name is Bob Wheeler. I've been here at ClearedJobs.Net for could be 5 years this year. It was 5 years ago this month that I retired from the Navy. So I was in the military. My last 3 years of that was recruiting physicians. So I was up in Maryland recruiting physicians. Thought for sure I was going to be a doctor recruiter. So I was networking and trying to meet people. Lo and behold, this person kind of took me under her wing to say, let me just introduce you to everybody in the DC area, because she's a great recruiting person. She's the chief marketing officer for this company. And by the time I got ready to retire, there was a job opening, and they said, hey, we've got a job for you, and I've been here ever since. So I really enjoy this part of being somewhere in between your world as a job seeker and your world as a recruiter. I've been both. And I know the thing that I saw was there's a disconnect. It's like two blind people in the same room walking around hoping to bump into each other. They're working hard, you're working hard, but if you're not working together, things don't really happen. So that's a little bit about myself. We're starting to get some folks in the room now, so let's just do a quick survey. Just kind of raise your hand. So first of all, how many people in the room right now are looking for a job right now? Could take a job if they offered you one? Okay. So how many of you folks here are more like looking for 3 months or longer? You've got some people who are just kind of networking. How many folks here are military veterans? All right, out of those military veterans, how many of you are looking for your first job since you joined the military? So this would be your first job. The last time you talked to a recruiter was in an office where they had a uniform.
Yeah, I'm currently transitioning out.
Currently transitioning out, but this will be the first one.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the last question, just to kind of give them an idea about what we're dealing with here. How many of you folks, this is your first time coming to a job fair in, say, the last 3 years or so? Anybody here, this is your first job fair? Okay, that can be kind of scary. But it doesn't have to be, and it's not going to be. And this is a great place to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some questions out to the team. I'm going to give you guys the same questions and kind of work back and forth so that you can learn more about what it is they do. And then, like I said, after that, we'll start taking questions from the audience. So the first question I like to ask so that job seekers can understand just how tough it is to be a recruiter sometimes is how many requisitions and how many hiring managers do you have? And so a requisition for you folks, that's how many jobs do they have to fill? Like how many jobs does Stacy have to fill to not get fired type thing? That's her job to do, right? And a hiring manager, which is this crazy term you hear all the time on LinkedIn and stuff, you're not sure who that person is. It's just somebody who's in charge of a department or division who has the authority to make a hire, right? So let's start with Stacy, then we'll go this way. How many different requisitions are you working right now personally?
Personally,
And how
myself,
many hiring managers are those falling under?
I have 8. Most of them are cleared. About 4 are just requiring public trust. As a company, 98. And in terms of hiring managers, which are our program managers or PMs, we have a total for the entire company, I'd say, I believe it's 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deanna, what about you? How many requisitions are you working and how many hiring
So I'm
managers
a little
do you
bit different in
support?
that I manage a
That's right.
team.
So how many does one of your recruiters then typically?
So my average recruiter usually, has it between 25 and 35 requisitions. If I just speak to the federal side of the house, right now I think we have about 75 open requisitions from a sales perspective as well as from operations, engineering, some for clearance, some not. So we're all over the board.
And then Amanda, what about you? How many requisitions CISO have or do you have personally, and how many hiring managers? We were going over this earlier. Yours is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, so, as the federal government, we're a larger organization, so everybody sort of takes a chunk of the recruiting process. And my job is more or less to, find a talent and, bring you in. There's about between 100 and 150 vacancies in our cyber office alone. And I'm the only recruiter right now for the organization, so I cover down for the entire organization. We're about 2,000 people strong.
And the reason we like to bring this up is because this is, some of the frustrations you have as a job seeker is, hey, I asked Amanda what she knew about this job and she didn't really know much about it. Does that make her a lousy recruiter? No, it makes her a busy recruiter. It makes her somebody, and also, and this is the kind of thing when it comes to job hunting, there's a little bit of martial arts involved in this. One of the things, I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy. I wasn't a fighter, but I did have to take martial arts classes a little bit. Right? So one of the things the Marine Corps taught me when I was working with him was, if they push, you pull, and if they pull, you push. So the more you can understand how these folks work, the more you can work in the same vein, and better things are going to happen, right? So we talked about different recs and different hiring managers. We're going to start with Amanda this time, work this way. But can you just talk a little bit about one of the questions that people kind of have is, like, are all hiring managers the same?
No.
And what,
Everyone here in this room is exactly the same. That's pretty much the diversity.
And I'm gonna give everybody's thoughts here on not only not just how they're different, but how being different hiring managers makes it harder on you, and how it might reflect on the job seeker getting different advice on how to get a job.
Yeah, I think you have to really work to build trust with a hiring manager. I think a lot of times people will look at HR and it kind of has a negative connotation, right? So, you have to gain their trust and make sure that they know that you're in their corner, that I'm in their corner, I'm really there to help them. And so then once you get past that, then it's, okay, let's have a conversation about where your job is, and let's get into a little bit more of a detail about what are you really looking for? What is not on that position description? What kind of characteristics or what makes the ideal candidate? And when I can get to that level, that's when, you can really start translating to a job seeker what we're really looking for. But there are some hiring managers that are way more engaged than others. There are some hiring managers that are just way more busy than others, and they're harder to catch. And the other thing is that there are some divisions that you go through a liaison to get to the hiring manager. So, yeah, a couple of different options.
Anything to add, Deanna, about hiring managers? What the experiences in your?
Yeah, they're absolutely unique, and all of them want unicorn. So you just have to try to figure out what that really means, and how we can best deliver the type of profile that's going to be successful in the position. CenturyLink being the second largest communications company, we have over 40,000 employees. So we're speaking at a very significant, and what we as a recruiting company really try to do is, because you may not be the right fit for maybe this individual or this personality or this organization, you may easily be the perfect fit over here. So what we really try to do is to have an alliance amongst the recruiters that are supporting federal or supporting government or supporting enterprise or supporting, there are so many different that we really try to share talent and really cross-pollinate, so we make sure that we have you going in the right direction. It's challenging.
Stacy, what do you do, either you personally or Feddata, or just what do recruiters do to help figure out that relationship with the hiring manager? Like when you get a job description, it's more than just, obviously, maybe some people don't know it. here's the job description I'm going to apply for, and when you talk to the hiring manager, it's not exactly as black and white. You know, what do you have to do as a recruiter to help figure that out?
As a recruiter, I have to know, first of all, we have to have a consistent requisition system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you go on Feddata or any of these ladies' websites, you know, you're going to pull up a job description. First, that has to be consistent, dress right dress, and it has to be descriptive. Yes, there's going to be times where there's missing information, and we only know that from the screen process. You know, one shift. Yeah, it may have a blanketed 8 to 5 p.m. shift, but really, what does that mean to the candidate? And secondly, you know, my director, Dean Drummond, has a saying within our recruiting group is, be an honest broker. You have to be honest to the candidate. And just like Amanda was saying, you have to formulate some type of relationship, both from the hiring manager, in our case, hiring manager and PM, because also we have to be cognizant of their time. Our PMs are at the Pentagon, they're down at the SCIF, they can't get on their phones, so we have to be cognizant of their schedule. At the same time, I want to be able to create rapport where, you know, I invite my candidates to text me, you know, what's going on, you know, talk to me, tell me your schedule. So we always try to put our candidates, first and foremost, their schedules. We've created that rapport with our PMs, where we've had to teach them, unfortunately, you know, candidates come first. You know, this is a candidate market. This is not an employer market. You guys have the upper hand. We don't.
And that's something that, you know, remember what a hiring manager is, and she's kind of alluded to how their time is so valuable. The reason that the hiring manager has authority to hire is because there's a need. And the hiring manager is still, she's doing the job, like she's running a department, and there's more work than there are people. That's why they got authority to hire. So they're busy, and that's why the recruiter's job is to make those liaisons and talk to things and be the honest broker. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, you know, we try to recognize good recruiters, we try to support good recruiters. That the relationship between a recruiter and a hiring manager is one of the most critical things, and you'll see that as a job seeker. You'll know when you have a good one, but you'll also know when you have a bad one, and it's a relationship. So it might not be the recruiter that's the problem. You know, sometimes it's just a very touchy, you know, hiring manager because they're not human resources people. They are engineers, or they're cybersecurity people, or they're sales developers. Whatever they are, they're not trained in that. You know, so that's a big thing there. You know, I want to kind of jump into a few more things that we hear about that are common things. How many folks here talk to recruiters in here? I need you to apply online sometimes. Anybody get that? How does that make you feel, Wanda, when they say go apply online?
I think it's protocol.
Kind of protocol, and it very much is. I know a lot of job seekers get kind of pushed back on that. There's some things called OFCCP. Has anybody ever heard of OFCCP? Anybody? Recruiters, have you ever heard of OFCCP?
Yes. Best friends.
It's one of the, it's a program that tells these folks how to do their job for the government, and it's sometimes the bane of their existence, and just the fact that the job seekers don't know it exists. And
it's to protect all of us.
Yeah.
You know,
Go ahead, Deanna, why don't you go ahead and start? You didn't start first.
Yeah, so you know, obviously consistency, you know, making sure that you are being protected, the company's being protected. It really is just making sure that, you know, discriminations are being removed. But in essence, to do that, you have to have consistency, you have to have some process, you have to have various different guidelines to make sure we're operating underneath the same umbrella. And I'm going to need you to apply is one of those big factors. You know, we cannot consider you many times as a protected candidate unless you are actually applied to the requisition and you're a part of our database.
So OFCCP stands for Office of Federal Contractor Compliance. So it runs, if you're a federal contractor, you have to follow these rules.
Right.
You know, so what is you know, applying online? Is that where, Amanda, we'll start with you. Is that where it officially counts as an application for you? I know some companies are like that, where that's an official application at that point, or how does it work for you?
Well, since we're the federal government, we use USA Jobs, which sounds very much like what your program is. And so it's very much the same thought and practice, right? We have prohibited practices and merit standards that we have to uphold. And so, you know, number one, that's my main priority, right, is to make sure that we can legally hire you, that we have followed the rules and the regulations. Because if we don't get it right from the start, I've seen where, you know, a candidate's job offer has had to be rescinded because we didn't follow the right procedures. And so you have to get it right all the way from the very beginning. And there's checks and balances and audits as you go through the process to catch those things. So hopefully, you know, it doesn't get to the point where somebody has a job offer on the table. But, you know, that's what the government mandates is fair and open process for all candidates.
And so this OFCCP has a lot to do also with applicant tracking systems. So Stacy, if you want to talk a little bit about OFCCP and then transition us right into how applicant tracking systems work, could you do that?
So just, to piggyback off of what Amanda had said, be cognizant of the fact that we have compliance we have to ensure that we're following. And you want that, okay? You want to be able to be garnered a fair playing field during the hiring process. So for instance, if I come back this morning, I had a situation hiring a young lady, and I noticed on her application details it said prior government service, but no details. So I need to know what that means, okay, in order to maintain compliancy. So during the process, if your recruiter, HR, hiring manager comes back to you a multitude of times while they're trying to get your recruitment or offer letter together, be patient. It's part of the process. We're not doing it to get under your skin. But again, like Amanda said, yes, there's been times where we've had to rescind an offer. And it's the worst feeling from a hiring manager, from a recruiter. It is the worst feeling in the world because we missed one detail, one simple detail. In terms of our hiring tracking system, in terms of how we track our applicants, we use a system called Taleo, which I don't know if you ladies.
Success factors.
Right, so Taleo is pretty much, it's a catalog of, from the first day that it either text you, receive your application, everything that you and I are talking, doing, saying, email, copy, paste into Taleo. And it's been a lifesaver. So again, if the HR recruiter comes to you with questions, please be patient. We're not doing it to get under your skin. We're doing it to maintain compliance, and it's a reassurance on both sides of the party.
Anything else about ATSs, Deanna?
Yeah, they're just necessary. They're just part of the business, and it's good that you have one because, as I mentioned, with the company the size of CenturyLink, we want to make sure we give you visibility, and the best way to get visibility to you is to be able to say, this person just interviewed for this role, wasn't quite the fit, so now I need to share it amongst my additional recruiting team, and our ATS allows us to do that. So.
And so before Amanda jumps on, I don't know how many of you folks have seen USA Jobs. Are you familiar with it at all? Because if you, as a job seeker, you probably know that there's a difference. I mean, and USA Jobs, what Amanda has to use is a little bit different the way it works. I mean, it does the same thing in essence. It does the same process, but the way it works is different. That's why you might hear someone say, "Hey, your resume on USA Jobs should be different than maybe anything else that you put on there." Anything to add about USA Jobs as an ATS?
Yeah, USA Jobs. Read the job announcement for one, and I know it's really long, but there are three really main things that you want to make sure that you're looking at, and you want to make sure it's included in your resume. So the first thing is the major duties. Every job announcement is going to say that. The second thing is going to be specialized experience. It's going to tell you, to be qualified for this position, we're looking for skill in X, right? And it might be 2 or 3 or 5 things even, but it's going to be a little bit different than the duties. And then there might also be a competency section. You are going to be evaluated on written communication skills. So great, so you need to make sure that you put in your resume that you wrote this really great presentation and you got all kinds of kudos for it, right? So just tell me about a time when you did something that demonstrates your written communication, and that needs to be in your resume. And so when you do that, your resume is going to be a little bit longer than a private sector resume.
And I think in the experience of talking to folks and dealing with USA Jobs versus private sector things, one of the things to remember is that I think that in the private sector, they're going to be a little bit more, they have a little more flexibility to ask you some questions about, hey, you didn't put this in your resume, do you have that experience? Where I think on USA Jobs, if you didn't put it on the resume, you may not even get referred. Right. So it's a much more automated system, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it.
Good question.
Yeah.
So can you cater the resume to the job that you're applying for? So if you have multiple resumes, that's a very good point, you guys. So because in some ATSs you cannot do that, so it's a little bit more difficult, but that's a really nice feature.
You can have 5 different resumes uploaded into your profile, and so you can title them all different things.
Yeah, that's great.
So let's break from what I'm doing, and we'll come back to what I'm doing. But any questions? Let's take some questions. Anybody got some questions that they'd like to? Tyler?
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of USA Jobs, so when I did, I used to work at USPFL in Maine, and so when we did our federal resume for there, it was they recommended it be like 8 pages long. And that was including the resume and then speaking to the KSAs. They're talking about, is that what you meant? Is that standard practice for places outside of just Maine? Because I'm not sure, like, does it need to be that long, or is it as short as you can answer the questions?
So, yes, as short as you can answer the questions. I recommend somewhere between 2 to 4, maybe 5 pages, depending on how much work history you have. I don't really think there's a lot of value in anything that's more than 10 years past, unless it's something very, very relevant to what you're applying to. That said, you know, take as many pages as you need to answer all of those things that are in the job announcement, but I have also seen 100-page resumes. Don't do that. Please do not do that. Right? And so I think a lot of times people just think that they have to meet a certain page count, right? So they put everything under the sun into the job or into their resume. What we're really looking for is how do you meet each one of these things that are on the job announcement. And once you answer all those questions, then you can stop, right? So it doesn't need to be everything in the kitchen sink.
We don't
We
need,
don't need your
first
training.
job at McDonald's.
Yeah, we don't need your training certificates.
So I almost appreciate when they're more specific on USA Jobs, like what they're looking for. Like one the other day where it was just said oral communication and like simple bullets like that, and they didn't really expound on what they're looking for outside of that. Even in the job posting itself, it was rather generic, but then a specific title. But everybody's job titles are different. So sometimes it's hard to write to the algorithm of USA Jobs when the job posting itself doesn't have enough relevant questions for you.
Yeah. Well, you can also, and it's in a different spot on every agency, their template is different, but if you search around enough, you can click a link that will take you to the occupational questionnaire, because once you apply, then it takes you to a list of questions that you have to answer. And so you can see those ahead of time. And that's what they're assessing you on, is those questions right there. So it may say, tell me about your experience with Microsoft Excel.
Okay. I didn't
Right?
get to it before.
So I think one of the things we want to take away from this little discussion too is that I'm kind of bringing it. No, it's okay, Taylor. It's a good question. But I do want to kind of link it to everybody. We talk about how everything is different. One of the things you can really get out of a job fair like this is talking to recruiters and saying, what's the best way to apply to a Feddata position? What's the best way to apply CenturyLink position? Because it's going to be a little bit different, and you should have different resumes for different jobs and different skills, maybe even for different companies. So those kind of questions, while specific to Amanda in this case, the same type of question can be a great question for all the companies that have the jobs that you're looking for. Another question? Wanda, go ahead.
So I know the long resume, but do you guys like?
No, do
You
not
guys
send
want-
me an
I wanna see
8-page
the long-
resume. You know, at the end of the day, when I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking primarily for 3 things. Are you cleared for this position? Okay, you need to have that first and foremost. Put down what clearance you have on there. Number 2, what systems, programs, software, tools. Put it in. I had a really great resume example that I meant to bring with me. This gentleman, 30 years, Oracle developer, wrote it down in an Excel spreadsheet at the top of his page. Language, everything. And I tell you, that has to be the best resume I've ever came across, because it was boom. Because honestly, I'm gonna look at the first half of your resume to see what you're currently doing. Does it even relate to the job posting? But I need to know, what are you using? And more importantly, I need to know if you're clear. And thirdly, please have contact information that's accurate, okay? And I mean your email and your phone number. I don't need to know what apartment number you live in. Sometimes I'm like, why is your full address there if I don't have a way to reach you? You would be really surprised, okay? So those are the 3 things I look for that needs to be on your resume, but no 8-page resumes. Don't send me your resume tag.
Yeah, and again,
No, I think you absolutely just, hit it on the head there. You're gonna look about halfway down, and that first half is gonna kind of prompt you if you want to continue. So just be very clear. Now with the address thing, I will say, put city and state on your resumes. I don't need to know your street or so forth, but city and state is important because, back in the olden days, we could tell by area code, where you lived, but that doesn't exist anymore because everyone takes their cell phone wherever they move and they never change their phone number. So if we have a position that's very location specific, if we need to talk about relocation, if there's different variables around that, I think having city and state on there is important. But clearance, all of that right in the beginning, put as much flash like right there, very clear, so we can see it.
how many job seekers here have heard the statistic like a recruiter can say yes or no to your resume in like 6 seconds? You guys heard that statistic?
Yeah.
How many of you guys think that's a fair statistic?
Yeah.
I think so.
You guys are the nicest, this is the nicest audience. Usually nice, like, no, I hate those people. But the point of the matter is that it goes from, it's not a yes or no in 6 seconds. Usually it's, in less than 6 seconds you can usually say no. Then it'll go to the maybe pile, or I look at it closer. But, and I think that what Stacy was talking about really hit the nail on the head about some things that are, like a clearance, for example. It's not, that's a non-negotiable thing for a job. So if you don't have the clearance, it doesn't take her 6 seconds once you saw that you don't have a full scope polygraph clearance. To not
And
have
be an honest broker when you're applying. There's so many individuals that will apply and say, yes, I have a clearance, and then I get on the phone with them, oh no, but I can obtain one.
Oh,
You know,
it's expired, right?
that is such a waste of everyone's time. Be an honest broker.
Yeah, right there, Chris.
Chris, I had a question, and thank you, ladies, for being so clear. One of the things that I've noticed is that there's a little bit of an imbalance between sometimes the request for the clearance and allowing the person who has probably not obtained a clearance or maybe had a downgraded clearance to explain why they're not cleared at that level, because it's not a vacuum. The person has to get a clearance at some point. So, it's like the chicken before the egg, So at some point you didn't have a clearance, and how do you get a clearance when somebody that you're applying to already wants you to have a clearance, So it's a little bit of a dicey situation when somebody has the capability for that particular job, but because they need to get in, they're not in.
You want to take that, Deanna?
No.
It's tough.
No, it is, and I think that when it comes down to, and these ladies probably can answer even much better than I'm going to, but it's timing of it, right? I mean, and you understand the length it takes with the clearances, even just to validate, even just to go through and make sure you have what you say you have is a very time-consuming piece. So it really comes down to the urgency, the time that we have to work within it. There are a lot of companies that have a little bit more flexibility, but there are some that just have none. And it's going to be pretty clear coming out of the gate, in a job description, that this is a requirement. If it's not required, but ultimately something that you would be able to obtain, then it's not going to be underneath the required piece.
And if the recruiter or hiring manager asks you, can we do a JPass verification, and you are unclear in terms of if you're TS eligible, do it. Okay, because oftentimes, I can't even present you to the PM or to the hiring manager until that JPasses came back with the proper information. I've had one individual that stopped the interview process because he didn't want to do the JPass. So our hands are tied on a lot of these programs.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the JPass.
So JPass is a system that adjudicates your clearance. It tells you what your clearance is.
Okay.
And I think one of the takeaways, and this is something that I don't think, especially people coming out of the military might really not understand, is the way that you make money for their company is to perform a service for X number of hours at X number of dollars. So their company is going to give you so much money for doing that work. The government's going to give them more than that. They're going to pocket the difference. That's how it works, right?
Yes.
So but you can't do the job unless you're cleared right. So if they hire you but they can't put you in that spot, they're not getting any money to give you any money, and you're not going to sit there for free and not take another job. So that becomes the conundrum where they say, I need to have someone with the clearance right now so they can start, so that CenturyLink or Feddata or whatever the company is can start getting that pull. So, and a good question that, I don't know if anybody here can answer this, maybe, but there are some organizations that do a better job, they have more flexibility to hire someone because they can say, I have worked for someone at this clearance level, I can put you here, I can plant you while we work on this other thing, and you can be making us some money.
Yeah, and you're gonna find those in a lot of agencies, kind of consulting type companies that have benches. So, those are the, companies you need to talk to, that you can be on a bench doing other type of work while this is being processed. So it's, but then there's some stipulations with that too, so just be careful, but yeah,
And
absolutely.
my characterization, is it any different than at CISA? Because I know you're a DHS type, so I don't know if there's any difference in it.
The beauty for the government is that when you apply to the job, we don't assume that you're going to have a clearance or not. We're here because we have a lot of vacancies to fill, and we want to fill them as quickly as we can. But if you apply for a job and you don't have a clearance with the federal government, we'll put you in for the clearance. Now, it might take a minute, right? right? So again, going back to that timing, and that's, you know, one of my challenges is how do I fill positions when it might take you a year to get a clearance? And are you gonna take another job in that interim, and are you gonna wanna come to work in my job if you're having a great time at the slow job that you took? So that's a big challenge for us.
Yeah.
But you will eventually, if your background is good, get a clearance, and then can start to work. And, you know, they need people that are already cleared because their company has contracted to fill a certain request, and they need to fulfill that request. And so that's, you know, the difference between the federal government and the companies.
And that turned out to be an excellent question, just highlight kind of the differences. And
Yeah,
Chris, your
big differences.
frustration is very valid and it's very common.
Absolutely.
You know, and believe me, the recruiters wish they could put you and hire you faster too.
But a caveat
Gets
to,
you him first and then you.
if you are currently holding a TS, but the position that you apply for only asks for a secret, you need to ask the recruiter and hiring manager, can you house my TS? Okay, ask them to park it somewhere. A lot of these programs and contracts have the capabilities, and I cannot tell you how many times I've talked to people over the phone, they're like, I had a TS, had a downgraded secret, and I have to let them know, why didn't you ask them to park it somewhere? You worked really hard for that TS, okay?
I didn't know that was a possibility.
Brent's next.
So how can you do, as far as for parking it, as you put, if you're a civilian company, how long can it be parked for?
For the duration that you are an employer, for us. I know that's how it works for us. So let's say the program's 2 years, you come up on the 2 years, as a recruiter, I'm gonna try to find you another program to go up to, and hopefully we won the recompete, but if not, you walk away with your TS. It just remains somewhere on a program that has the eligibility to park that TS.
That's a great tip, Stacy. Brent, got a question?
Thank you all for providing us great information. And Stacy, I think it's probably, you had mentioned it before, what would you look for in for anybody if you're non-technical and you're looking at qualitative things, leadership, some intangible things?
Oh,
You know, so I can see your point. It is really easy because I'm in the federal government. I know how to line things out when I'm looking for technical things, but if I'm looking more leadership.
If you're leaning on your soft skills kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's right.
To be very candid, the positions I currently have open are all technical. They're very specific, okay? Now, when it comes to, like, if we have an ops manager position, and this has happened before. We had a young lady that worked with the DOJ. She didn't really have her hands too much into the systems, had a little bit of time down in the SCIF, but couldn't really hone in on one system. But what she brought through the interview process was she was hungry. She had a fire in her belly, okay? She knew how to mitigate through the interview process. And it was just something about her. It was like, especially people in leadership roles, you can sense as a recruiter, like there's a fire in your belly that you really want to get to work, okay? I mess with too many people who say they're on the market, but they're just kind of playing me a little bit, you know? But when this individual, you know, is coming back online, hey, just wanted to follow up, and we make a connection, and I'm able to advocate for this individual, and she got the job. She got the job because she showcased herself that she was a people person, okay? She created relationships between myself, my director, the PM, the VP. She wanted to talk to people. She wanted to learn more about the company. So we gave her an opportunity. You know, she wasn't honing in on a particular, you know, she worked in Windows environment, but not to the capacity that most OAMs or PMs do, and she's rocking it right now. So really buy into the company. And if you're on the market and you're interviewing with other people, let us know. It's not gonna downgrade your eligibility. If anything, if I like you, it's gonna make me work harder. It's really gonna make me wanna hustle and get you in and advocate for you.
Dan, anything about soft skills or less technical?
Sure, and I have a ton of those, you know, so we have just a very small, actually, of technical, and a lot of that is elsewhere, and that's where the relationship with the recruiter and the hiring manager is so important. The soft skills are the biggest challenge. You know, you can't just put on a resume, you know, I'm a good people person. It's like, okay, are ya? You know, you just don't. It's conversation, it's talking about it, but I will say, a lot of leadership experience, I know within CenturyLink, and it's something that we're very proud of, is promoted from within. When we do go outside, we do look for folks that have had leadership type roles. So I would absolutely highlight that in your resume and in your experience, and be specific, because titles are extremely, extremely misleading. You know, you can say that you're a director, but you're truly an individual contributor, or even VP. I see VP titles that they're truly individual contributors. So be specific about your leadership skills, the types of individuals that you managed, the types of responsibilities that you were, you know, held against. Those types of things will be helpful.
And when you talk about things like program management, leadership skills, you know, the quantification of numbers and projects and things like that is important. But also, and something that Deanna brought up that I don't always bring up in this seminar, but I think it's super important, is understand, watch what kind of titles you use and how you describe yourselves, because people, especially for folks coming out of the military, I'm highlighting kind of veterans here. You know, I see all kinds of resumes that say that they reported directly to the CEO. You know, well, the CEO of CenturyLink is different than the CEO of 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. You know, very different. And even the CEO of 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines isn't even the CEO, because he's got a boss, and there's a general on top of that, and there's a general on top of that.
Right.
So, you know, you have this, sometimes you have this feeling that you want to inflate your title to make
Right.
yourself feel better,
Right.
and what you can end up doing is you either A, inflate yourself out of the market for a program manager job, or B, they say, hey, this person doesn't know what they're talking about.
So that comes back to transparency. You know, you want your recruiters to be transparent with you, and we want to do that too. We want to tell you why you did not get the job. And I can tell you that's a hard call. It's a hard call to pick up the phone with someone you build a relationship with and tell them why they did not get the job. But we want to give you that feedback in order to help you, you know, get stronger in your interview, get stronger in how you're applying for a position. So I think it's good to hear it. You know, it's very hard to deliver it though sometimes. So be transparent.
We got about 10 more minutes before we got to let these ladies go. So you had a question right there, Jennifer?
Yes. So I'm currently pursuing certifications in the networking area of IT and cybersecurity, but I don't have any hands-on experience in those areas. So in your experience, have you came across any candidates who got hired because they had the required certifications but no experience?
That question of certs versus experience is so common. Anybody want to take that? Because I hear that a lot, especially from cybersecurity people.
Yeah, cyber.
You want to start cybersecurity, CISA?
Well, for our positions, the certifications are not required. It's not an eligibility or a qualification requirement. It does look really great to a hiring manager, because what it shows them is that you're really interested in pursuing the field, that you are keeping abreast of new technologies. We're seeing new technologies before anyone else. And so that's really, really important to us, is to know that this is a passion of yours, that it's not just a fad, it's something that you're really interested in and want to continue to learn in. That said, if you don't have any experience with the federal government, you are brought in at a grade level based on how much education you have. And so that could be a 5 or a 7 or a 9, right? Once we get past the 9, there is really no educational equivalent. A GS-11 would be someone who has a PhD, right? So, you know, if you're looking to get your foot in the door with the government without any experience, you might have to take a lower graded position.
I mean, I have a higher degree, but that's in chemistry, but I want to pursue networking. So how does that play out?
It does have to be related.
Yes. And Stacy, I know you're a cyber organization
Well,
as well.
unfortunately, I don't know about you, DoD does require certs. And if you're walking in here, I'm going to say at least go after your Security Plus.
But if they have certs but don't have the experience, because he's transferring from something else, he's like, you know, I've never been paid to do this, but look, I hit all these wickets that you say here. I met all my certs. Do you have a job for me?
I can tell you this: minimum requirement for cyber is about 5 years plus. That's incident, ACAS, you know. So the funny thing about IT, and everyone that's just coming out, transitioning career-wise, military, even if you start at service and help desk, you stay there for maybe 4 to 6 months, and you figure out, do you want to go cyber, admin, engineer? It's not permanent. We've had individuals who started at a help desk level, took that 6 months and went and got their certs, and we ended up hiring them as system admins. So you know, you have to start somewhere. It can be a bit of a humbling moment. I understand.
You have to be realistic.
You really have to be realistic. It's not saying it's not doable, because it is. I've seen it done.
Yeah.
But give yourself a plan of action, a 2-year goal. If you want to be a CND, you know, if you want to get your CND, or you want to, you know, become an incident analyst, what does that path look like? And I promise you, everyone started, you know, I had to say from the bottom and then worked their way up, okay?
So if I have the certification, there is a possibility that at least I can start at the bottom.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. We've only got a few more minutes left. One of the questions that I like to bring up with my recruiters while I have here, because I think this is always interesting. We're going to assume that everybody in here come to the job fair today and got a job offer for an interview. So everybody here gets interviewed, right? Which is awesome. So after they come from the interview, there's tips out there that said they should send a thank you note, thank you card, you know, to the people who interviewed you. What are your thoughts on, is there a value in, or what's the best way to do it? Should they send an email? Should they not do anything? Should they send a hand letter? You know, thank you notes after interviews. Let's start here and go that way.
Okay. Look, if you do or you don't say thanks for your time, it doesn't affect me. What does affect me is if you don't answer my phone calls, my emails, my text messages. Be ready, because I hit the ground running.
Does it affect the hiring manager at all?
Absolutely not. The hiring manager, yeah, they're usually down buried in the skiff somewhere. They wouldn't know they.
Deanna, any thoughts on that?
A little bit different. So yes, the hiring managers do appreciate a thank you. Just make sure it's grammatically correct, and they do appreciate a quick. And it doesn't have to be long. Just 2 or 3 sentences. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed. Blah blah blah. It could even be, but if you copy or if you cut and paste, make sure you double check that you're changing names on it and companies on it, and so it is nice to follow. Not with the recruiter, hiring manager.
Anything to add, Amanda?
I mean, I'd say it's probably 50-50 with us. You know, you'd have to send an email. We don't publish our
Right.
address, but
so the thing, I think, one thing to think about this is another great example of 3 different companies with 3 different things. The person that you don't necessarily need to thank so much, I mean, the recruiter is not the one that's going to make the hiring decision. You should thank her or him for no matter what, just as polite,
Just for anything.
you know. But if you go to an interview, especially if they give you a business card, you get somebody's email address, the ability to say, thank you very much for your time, and one more time to say, I really want this job, I really think I'm a great fit for this job, or whatever. Don't go into, like she said, don't write a book, you know. And so if you're not sure, ask the recruiter, hey, does this matter? Because, you know.
Just put you in front of them one more time. So
but
think about it. If I say, you know, how did your conversation with this candidate, what's the first thing you're going to do is like, okay, who is that? And you're going to go into your search and you're going to type that person's name. And then you're, oh yeah, well here they wrote me a thank you.
But as Stacy says, in that recruiter, that hiring manager doesn't care, no worries, you've asked.
You have to know your audience.
And you might get a different answer from Deanna depending on what manager you were talking to.
Right.
So we are running right out of time. I'll let you guys say any other things that you want to add. We're going to get about 3 more minutes left. So let's start with Amanda and work our way this way. And then when we're all done, I'm going to let these ladies go. I'll hang around, answer some more questions for folks. That way that if you ever want to talk about stuff, I'll hang around and talk to you. But go ahead and start. Anything you want to add before we go?
I would just say, you know, try and talk at every table, right? You never really know what people have in their back pocket. Like, we brought along some internship flyers just in case anybody's got a kid that wants a job in it or wants a summer internship in cyber. It closes tomorrow, so they can still apply. But just, you know, just talk with everybody and you know, don't assume anything. I would also say don't like, you know, push yourself too much, right? Don't come up to my table and say, well, I'm a GS-14, because that will put off everybody at in my booth.
Yeah, no, I just wish everyone the best and hope that you find your path and, you know, be kind. I hope everyone just is, you know, kind out there in this whole process, because it's tough. It really is. I absolutely understand it. So just be empathetic and be transparent, and I guarantee you they'll all fall into place.
Stacey, you want to close us down?
Yeah, know your worth, okay? If a recruiter, HR, hiring manager asks you your salary requirements, you come back with what's your max, okay? Know your worth. You know, you may go in here playing like you're playing the funk, but you know what? Confidence is everything. I promise you it is. And also, engage on LinkedIn.
Oh yes, talk to everybody.
Recruiters, I'm hiding out on
everybody.
LinkedIn, okay? You can look me up, Stacy Garnett, Feddata. Send me a message. Let's make a connection. So many people I've come across, I may not be able to help them then, but I see a job under recruiters, and I'll message you.
Yeah,
We all
join
work
networks
together
on
as a
LinkedIn,
community.
get out, make sure your LinkedIn profile is clean, make sure it's accurate and up to date. LinkedIn is our
Engage, because we look at it.
every day.
We check it, we check your profile.
Every single day. How many connections you have, like all of it. Do not be afraid. Accept everything that comes your way. I just, accept you. I never know. You never know. And it's all about networking.
Yep.
We can
And
talk
timing.
we could talk forever. I mean, there's things we didn't get to.
We're recruiters. We can talk all
But
the
yeah,
time.
but I just want to say thank you to Amanda, Deanna, Stacy. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Make sure you stop by and see these folks at their tables. Make sure you see everybody. And like I said, I will hang around here if anybody wants to talk to me for a while. I can give you tips on things. My business card, keep with me on LinkedIn. I can keep with them on LinkedIn too. We're all in this together. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Very cool.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank